Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Thursday night, February the 19th. Lovely to have you guys for another episode of the Primetime program. We appreciate your participation as always. Let's talk about Calvin Ridley and one of the more polarizing figures that the Titans will have to make a decision on, one way or the other. Now, in reality, they may have already made their decision, and we just don't know it externally. They're not commenting publicly on the status of players, guys who are pending free agents, guys who still have years left on their deal, but might make sense to move on from. There's a handful of guys in that particular pool, that second pool of players who are all of varying degrees of, do you want to keep them or do you not? The only real one that I would axe definitively if I was making decisions in this particular situation, which lucky for you, I'm not, would be L'Jarius Sneed. And I think most people would be on board with that. I would be pretty surprised if Sneed was playing for the Tennessee Titans in 2026. But, again, they don't have any damn corners to work with. So if they say, I don't know what you want us to do, we've got so many problems and that one's under contract, we'll try and make it work. I guess I would probably blame them if that was the path that they chose to take. I think there's so many reasons to move on from it. But a more complicated figure in all of this is Calvin Ridley, who is going to be 32 towards the end of next season, has missed a ton of time. The most time, we looked it up today on the radio show. We believe it was the most time Calvin has missed specifically due to injury in his career. He obviously took some time away in 2021 for mental health. He was suspended for a full year after that before he came to the Titans. What was that, 2023? So I believe it was the 2022 season that he served his year-long suspension for the gambling situation that he got caught up in. And so now he's in a spot where they can move on from him if they want to. They would have to eat some dead cap, and they've got money to eat the dead cap if they wanted to. But they're also in a situation as a roster where you can't really turn your nose up at too many players at this point in time, especially when you have them on cost-controlled, team-controlled deals like Ridley is. Ridley has this season and next season, theoretically, on the books. His base salary, or rather his guaranteed money this year, is significantly lower. His biggest guaranteed chunk was last year. His cap hit is slightly lower. It was 28 last year. It is just about 26 heading into 2026. And so you look at this situation and say, all right, cost-benefit analysis of Calvin Ridley. What exactly do you do here if you're the Titans? Brian Daboll was asked a question about that, and it did get a little bit of run. We can talk about it together. Obviously, Ridley in Alabama, when he was at Alabama before he was drafted into the NFL, was with Brian Daboll for a year as one of the most productive wide receivers that Alabama has had. Alabama has had a ton of wide receivers. His last season in Tuscaloosa, his junior year, was one of his best, and he was certainly one of the nation's most explosive wideouts during his college time working with Brian Daboll. So we'll talk about that tonight. We'll talk about which free agent wide receivers that aren't currently on your roster, not guys that are pending, that you might be interested in targeting, and then we'll do a little rising and falling. No, I'm sorry. We will do a weekend bounce back. I forgot to change the graphic tonight. That's on me. We will do a bounce back at the end of the show. Share the show around Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, wherever you are spending your precious and valuable time with us. We do appreciate your participation that way. Dive on in there as you will, and we'll go ahead and get this thing rolling. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the T-Dot Studios, where the Tennessee Department of Transportation always reminds you that you can be a part of the solution to end littering at NobodyTrashesTN.com. By Simon Says Nashville, the premier men's clothing spot in Nashville is Simon Says. You can check their store out in Wedgwood, Houston. Happy one-year anniversary to Simon Says. And by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Online at TwoRiversFord.com. Quality American-made Ford vehicles, award-winning customer service are what they offer. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at TwoRiversFord.com for more details. We do have a new partnership that we think we're going to be able to announce either next week or the following, so you can look forward to that. It's a really cool spot that I'm looking forward to telling you guys more about once we get all that done. Cole jumps in and says, hear me out, Buck, because I can't stay long, but Tyreek Hill on a big incentive one-year deal. I can hear it now. bleep it, Tyreek downfield somewhere. No, and now you can leave. I don't want anything to do with Tyreek Hill. I don't think, Borgonzi would know what that looks like, obviously, with their time together in Kansas City. The only place it really makes sense is Kansas City, given their current circumstance, especially if you did it on the cheap. But I don't want Tyreek Hill coming off that gruesome injury. He was already starting to fade in Miami, had 2 awesome seasons. He may be one of the 4 or 5 best offensive players the Miami Dolphins have ever had in the history of their franchise over the course of those 2 years, where he was he could have been considered an MVP candidate, certainly an offensive player of the year. But yeah, I'm good on the Tyreek Hill thing. So yeah, you got to, Cole says fair, got to change the tire. All right, go get him, Cole. Good luck. All right. So Calvin Ridley at this point in time, Brian Daboll was asked about Calvin Ridley. And the question that I'd ask you, simple as this, is would you keep or cut Calvin Ridley in 2026? You can dive in the comment section. It is your Two Rivers Ford take, made possible by the aforementioned South's most trusted Ford dealer. Two Rivers Ford, quality American-made Ford vehicles, award-winning customer service, local, honest, and transparent. That is Two Rivers Ford. So would you keep or cut Calvin Ridley as your Two Rivers Ford take tonight? And the Ridley experience has been not great in Tennessee. He had 1,000 yards receiving in 2024 with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. That is an accomplishment unto himself. Last year, he played in only 7 games due to injury. And in those 7 games, he was not terribly effective. The most productive version of Calvin Ridley was that Arizona game where he caught a couple of passes at the end of the game to put the Titans in position to win the game after the Cardinals, literally and figuratively fumbled it away on a couple of different occasions. His contract situation, he signed a 4-year, $92 million deal in 2024, as you will recall. And the contract currently has an out where it was essentially a 2-year, $48 million deal with a dead cap hit of $13 million if they were to cut him this year. His cap hit is 26.7. They would have to eat 13 of that if they chose to move on from Calvin Ridley this offseason. Now, there is also some pre-June 1 versus post-June 1 consideration to take into account there. He will be 32 in December, late December of this year, so he's got some time at this point. But we understand that once a wide receiver gets into his 30s, it can be. I saw somebody on the radio show comments section today compared it to a car with a check engine light, and it does feel a little bit like that, right? One of these sports cars, one of these European cars that you're going to have to get a lot of work done on at various points, especially as it gets more miles on it, because they're just more likely to break down and their athleticism starts to fade in this particular situation. And, you could do a lot more with $26 million in that particular spot, or, essentially $13 million in that particular spot if you chose to use it elsewhere. If you ate some of the cap, if you cut Calvin Ridley. And then there's Calvin, the person, who I enjoy Calvin Ridley, okay? I think that Calvin Ridley, when he's got his mental right, not to say that he's like a total head case or something like that, like Tyreek Hill is my definition of a head case and also, objectively a bad person. But with Calvin has moments where I just think things get to him, and he's a very emotional player. And sometimes that works to your benefit, and sometimes that works to your detriment, right? That's not it like any situation. I'm sure people, in any line of work have or know people like this where, yeah, they can get in their own head sometimes. And whether Calvin admits to that or talks about that, he did take a considerable amount of time away in 2021 for specifically mental health reasons. I think it's something that's an ongoing battle for him. And I try not to pry too much into their personal lives that way. We did, the day that Calvin had his introductory press conference in Tennessee, we did have a sit-down interview with him in which I thought he was very transparent about some of the struggles, some of the battles that he's been through, and what that was like to essentially, find a place that believed in him in Tennessee on a long-term deal, as opposed to, his experience in Atlanta at the end, and then the Jacksonville 1-year deal where they ultimately let him walk. Now, ended up being smart for Jacksonville. The return on investment on Calvin has not been It's not paid off yet, right? But so that's the cost. The benefit is you got a bunch of holes on this roster all over the place, a bunch, a ton. And wide receiver still needs to be addressed. You still need to sign a free agent wide receiver, even if you keep Calvin Ridley. You still need to probably draft at least one wide receiver, even if you keep Calvin Ridley. Chimere DK, you like the trajectory that he's on. Not a concrete commodity on offense yet. He's definitely a plus special teamer. Nobody would argue that. An All-Pro in his rookie year. Iamaner, had some moments, and again, all rookies will have adversity that they have to battle through, especially when you're playing that long of a season. But Iamaner, started better than he finished, I would say. And to me, if he ends up being a more high-end version of NWY, then yeah, that's something that you like in your bag as a fourth or a fifth, like on the depth chart, but not somebody that you want starting and playing as much as both of them had to play this year for obvious reasons. It was a tough spot for the young rookies for the fourth-round picks that they added. You like where they're at as pieces, but you still understand that they are far, as a room, it's far from concrete. It's not a reliable wide receiver room, even if they do keep Calvin, right? Now, the conversation becomes, okay, so 26 million, 26.7 against the cap. It's not his highest cap hit. It's ironically the third highest cap hit that he'll have on the 4-year deal that he has, where last year he counted against the cap for 28. And obviously had a dead cap figure that was 40.5 plus. That now drops to 13, but he does account for damn near 9% of your salary cap. As the salary cap currently exists, we don't have the hard 2026 offseason salary cap figure yet. Currently, Calvin Ridley counts for almost 9% of your cap. That would shrink a little bit when the cap, as expected, goes up to ballpark 300 mil. JQ says, well, if you sign an X like Pittman, who, by the way, they haven't moved on from, then you don't need Calvin. It just depends on who hits the market. Yeah, but it's not a 1-for-1. You're going to pay a shit ton more for Calvin Ridley at 26 it's about fair market value. Wide receivers are making $35-40 million a year now, okay, on an average annual basis. Not strictly cap hits, but like they're trending in that direction. Michael Pittman, if they were to move him or move on from him in that situation, Alec Pierce, by the way, in Indianapolis, is a pending free agent wide receiver who will probably be at the top of the market. You do have guys like Mike Evans, who will be 33 and is coming off one of his most injured seasons, but Mike Evans is probably a Hall of Famer, and I think a lot of people would at least want to consider the idea of that. I do not agree with like the idea of what was just posed there, Calvin for Pittman, because Pittman then just becomes an infinitely more expensive option than Calvin. He will eat up a higher percentage of your salary cap. Could you do a deal in which his cap hit this specific season in 2026 was lower and that it ages, that it goes up as years go on? Because, for example, Calvin's in his first year with the Titans, the year that he was a 1,000-yard receiver, was only 10 mil. And then it ballooned up to 28. Now it's back down to 26. So you can structure these deals in a way that's palatable, but I am not for cutting Calvin for the sake of another wide receiver who's probably not a bona fide wide receiver one. I like what Indy has, but Indy is good because Indy has Pittman and Downs and Pierce and Warren, right? And they also have Jonathan Taylor, who is going to be like 27 or 28. He's still one of the youngest. He's still one of the youngest skill position players out there. But the question is keep or cut. If you're asking me personally, I think that the risk of keeping Calvin is lower than the reward that you stand to gain if Calvin gives you something. If Calvin doesn't give you anything, it's a sunk cost either way, right? You're going to have to eat money. You're going to have to move on from him. And it makes that decision easier come 2027. You may move on from him in 2027 regardless. My personal feeling is you give him an opportunity, you give him a fresh start in this new offense with a coach who knows him a little bit and who I think Calvin is good for Cam Ward. Now, as far as the reliability of Calvin in these games, Calvin was not good for Cam Ward. In fact, Calvin was one of the most disappointing things that you thought was going to be able to help Cam, survive and maybe not thrive in his rookie season. It was always going to be tough. But Calvin was one of the biggest letdowns across the board in a season full of letdowns. It was unfortunate that did not go anywhere close to plan. But you are in a circumstance where you need wide receiver options. You need options. And I wouldn't advocate for Calvin to get snaps over a young rookie or a free agent wide receiver who's more reliable. But I am not going to make the case that a Titans roster that has needs all over the place should be in the business of creating more needs. I think Calvin deserves a fresh start. I think T'Vondre Sweat, another example of this, deserves a fresh start. I don't think you're in a position to just be tossing players to the side. It's why I got so upset about the Jarvis Brownlee thing with them last year, because, again, you look at their cornerback room, and unless he was a real pain in the ass, and you hear mixed stuff about how big a pain in the ass he actually was versus, his side of the story, which he keeps hinting at on social media if you follow Jarvis still. It's why I was bothered by the Jarvis thing, because he has to be a real problem for you to make that deal. And it was a terrible deal that they ended up doing. The return on investment for that was garbage. It was a non-factor. It does not impact their day one or day two draft capital at all. And he was a starting corner. He ended up starting for the Jets. Maybe that was the best offer that they got. I think if that was the best offer that you were going to get, you should keep him, because you are not in the business of creating more needs. But Calvin is a different situation. Calvin has obviously been a good player in the NFL. He has not been good in Tennessee. He has had moments where he has been good in Tennessee. Joshua says, think Calvin was in a down mental state playing for Callahan. I don't know if that's a statement or a question. I mean, listen, it doesn't matter who the coach is if you're 3-14 back-to-back years, right? Like, nobody gives a shit who you're playing for, who your quarterback is. Like, they're 3-14 with Cam Ward. Is he down mentally because Cam Ward's his quarterback and they're 3-14? Or Brian Callahan's his coach and they're 3-14? No, they're 3-14. And it doesn't matter. Everybody's in hell, right? Like, it's one of these awful circumstances. Bobcat says, they all get fresh starts. Go listen to the coach's pressers. Yeah, dumbass, like I wasn't at the coach's pressers. It's just something that you say. Not everybody's actually getting a fresh start. Some people will get a fresh start, but not a lot of the personnel decisions that you see moving forward will be predetermined before those coaches even get up to the podium, because those coaches aren't in charge of the roster, right? They're going to give a fresh start to whoever's left as Mike Morganzi and his staff make those decisions, which in large part were made last season, throughout the course of last season. Shit, I'm honestly surprised that Sweat survived the deadline. And I think that's a situation that you're going to monitor all year long. Now, he's a second-round pick on a rookie deal, and that is a circumstance that bears monitoring, because he's much more acquirable this year than he was last year. Your return on investment, again, would not be good if they decided to move Sweat, but it's just something that coaches say. It's not something that you should assign such value to, like when Brian Daboll talks about Calvin Ridley. Listen to how he leads off his answer to this question.
Calvin Ridley at Alabama, what are your thoughts on the possible opportunity? I know you're not doing roster moves and stuff like that, but the possibility of working with him, what are your thoughts on that, and how have you seen him progress from when you had him in college?
Yeah, I would say that, one, I appreciate the question, T. I'm not going to answer roster questions, but I do know Rid, have a relationship with Rid. He was great for me at Alabama. He's had a productive career in the National Football League, and look forward to working with him.
Coach Chris Harris at WSMV.
Yeah, it's a very, very vanilla answer. Not going to comment on roster decisions. Had him in college. Know he's had a good career. Look forward to working with him. If he's here, right? Like, that's as much of a non-answer as you can get for your fresh start, right? And a lot of people took that specific answer, aggregated it, talked about that last night as, it sounds like Calvin Ridley's going to be back. Maybe not. It's not, it's because immediately Jeffrey says, meaning Rid is out. No, it doesn't mean that he's out or in. It just means I'm the offensive coordinator and I don't have roster control. Like, it's just, if he's here, great. If he's not, okay, we'll figure it out. Like, that's basically what that question is. It doesn't determine one thing or another. And if he does get cut, there's going to be people who come back and say, well, that's what Brian Daboll was hinting at on February 18th. No. And if he stays, people are going to say, oh, that's what Brian Daboll was hinting at on February 18th. No, it means I don't know what the future is, but I've worked with him and I liked working with him when I worked with him, right? It's just one of those things. So as all of the, somebody says, well, Van Jefferson, Oliver, and Kinsey survive. Van Jefferson's an unrestricted free agent. I'm good on Van Jefferson. With all due respect, wonderful person. But no, get better at wide receiver. Get younger. If you want to stopgap your way through wide receiver free agency, that's fine. He's not under contract. Bryce Oliver is an interesting situation. Kinsey is a cockroach. He's damn near Kinsey's almost my age, which is kind of crazy. The fact that he's still out here surviving on practice squads to his credit. Robbie Ashby says more likely to get caught, Pollard or Ridley. Neither. I at least let me not say that because I don't know definitively what they're going to do. But I know that neither of those players, or at least my position would be, neither of those players are such a detriment to you that you can afford to cut either of them. I don't think you're in a position to cut either of them. You're not winning the Super Bowl this year, guys. Okay. You're trying to get this baseline functional around Cam Ward and build it up as it goes. Pollard's fine. The offensive line in front of him was shit last year. It made Tony's job a hell of a lot harder. It's a lot of running backs that would struggle. The fact that Derrick Henry had 1,000 yards his last season here behind that dog shit offensive line is a testament to Derrick Henry, future Hall of Famer. Okay. The vast majority of running backs are dependent upon the blocking in front of them, and the blocking in front of Tony last year was dog shit. The offensive line's better, Tony will be better. The offensive line's not, Tony won't be. Like, it's one of those things. The only one that I would bang the table to cut is Sneed, because there's just nothing there. There hasn't been anything there in 2 years. That is the most sunk cost that they have, is L'Jarius Sneed. And it's the biggest position group, probably the most like bodies that they have to fill, because Sneed and Marcus Harris are the only two corners that they have under contract. And one of them is very not viable. And the other one, I don't know about Marcus Harris. Like, he's a 6th round pick. If it works out, great. If he ends up being a good depth player, great. If he has like a good season, maybe we talk ourselves into, oh yeah, that guy can mess around or something like that. But it's not a good plan, right? So I'm in favor of keeping Calvin. I'm sure there will be, I think most of you are probably on board with the same logic of, like, they just can't keep throwing away players at quality positions of need. Not that Calvin is a quality player right now, but if he becomes an ancillary option instead of your primary, life gets a lot easier for him and for you. So we'll see what happens. All right. Let's talk about the free agent wide receiver that you would want the Titans to target, because I have one in mind, and I think he makes a lot of sense. And he's probably going to get a contract about the size of Calvin Ridley's current contract, not what market adjustments over the course of the last 2 years would garner for this player. I'll get to that here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Two Rivers Ford, by TDOT, the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Remind you that nobody trashes Tennessee. Be a part of the solution to end littering at nobodytrashestn.com. They are there to help you, help the environment, help your community. So many great things. I think littering is bitch behavior. And I think that TDOT has a great program for volunteer opportunities, or just resources if you want to start your own volunteer opportunities. Or if you just want to be a good person, go to Amazon, pick up one of those little trash grabber tools like I did. They come in packs of 2. Sometimes, you get ones that are better quality than others. Maybe just go pick up some trash in your neighborhood. It's good for your community, good for the environment, good for the state of Tennessee. And nobody trashes Tennessee at nobodytrashestn.com. All right. Ooh, I just got some. Okay, that doesn't really affect you guys, but a friend of mine just got a job in the NFL that I'm very happy about. So that's really cool. And we're going to see him in Indy. In fact, we're having dinner with him on Monday night. So we're excited about that. Anyway, so Not relevant to you. I'm sorry for the distraction, but we're very happy for our friend. Anyway, so all of the things that we talked about, Calvin Ridley, I'd keep him. I still think free agent wide receivers need to be added. I still think draft picks at wide receiver need to be added. And the one player that I would emphasize is Jauan Jennings. Jauan Jennings has a different skill set than a lot of the wide receivers that they have on the roster. He has the mentality that I want on this roster because there's not enough of those. I think Cam's got that juice. I think that Jeff Simmons has it. Beyond that, I mean, Allec's kind of a dog when it comes to blocking, in a good way. He seems to really enjoy blocking. I want more physicality, more meanness. I want Jauan Jennings at about $22 to $24 million a year. Brandon Bevers Luis, how the hell do I say that? Says, when's the last time you picked up trash in your neighborhood? I literally did it today because it was so nice. I put my AirPods in, took half a gummy, walked around the block, picked up a bunch of bottles. I hate littering. For some reason, we get like an inordinate amount of like those travel food containers that I see pop up. I think there's a church that passes out food, which is, of course, a really good thing. But there does tend to be a little bit more littering on my block for that particular reason, it would seem, which I'm not in love with, but I did it literally today. I tried to do it a couple of times a week. It's a good way for me to get my steps. I got my Apple Watch on, I track it, the whole thing. So anyway, Jauan, dog, local dog. He is one of the meanest players in the NFL, regardless of position. He's one of the most reliable chain movers in the NFL. He is not somebody who's going to be top of market, which I'm for. I don't think that you should be shopping at the top of the free agent pool this year. I think that you should find yourself a middle tier wide receiver option and draft or try to draft your improved options for future usage. I would structure the deal in a way that probably gives you 3 years total on the deal, but makes it 2 years with an out. I think that Jauan would be a really good presence for Cam. I think he would be a really good locker room presence. I think he is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league. Now, once he gets to that age where that starts to fall off, obviously all of those things become less viable. But they just need somebody who's consistent, who's contested catch, who has the ability to come down with contested catches, who's going to be physical as shit when it comes to the run game. Jauan Jennings fits that bill. I am for Jauan Jennings as a Titan. All right. So, a little bit of rising and falling. No, we did that last night. A little bit of weekend bounce back. Who needs to bounce back most in sports this week? Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch is where you can submit your nominees. We will talk about them together right after I remind you. The Primetime program is made possible by the premier men's clothing spot in Nashville. Simon Says Nashville.com is where you go, conveniently located in Wedgwood, Houston. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. They are offering all manner of great deals for you to dress for success. Simon Says Nashville.com for more details. Okay, so as we talk about people that need to bounce back this weekend, Canadians got their asses kicked today by Team USA Women's Hockey. Badass, play free bird, a golden goal to go ahead and win the game, to win the gold. It was an awesome performance by the women's hockey team. They have been just an absolute wagon throughout the course of these Olympics. We're looking forward to seeing if the men's team can continue to uphold the level of competitiveness that the women did. But it was a badass performance by the women's USA hockey team. So stock down Team Canada. Eat it, Canada. We're very happy to see Canada lose. Ilya Malinin needs a bounce back. Oh, who is we talked about that person earlier on the radio show, right? He's an American athlete. I can't remember what the story was around him, Jake. You might have to remind me, but I do remember that name. Robert, did you bring that name up? Ilya Malinin, the name. What was the context?
Quad guy.
Okay. Oh, he did the flip and he botched it. Yeah, the whole thing. Okay, got it. Figure skater. Thank you. Yeah, he did not have a great situation. Chase Elliott and NASCAR says Jeff Sawyer needs to bounce back. Jeff says Scheffler needs a bounce back. What happened to Scotty Scheffler? I've not paid any attention to golf this year, if I'm being honest with you. It's a bad job out of me. I really enjoy golf. If I happen to stumble upon golf, like I'll sit there and watch it. I enjoy it. I think I actually do find it to be entertaining. I know some people just put it on in the background and take a nap. But yeah, I haven't seen what happened with Scotty Scheffler. So unless he got arrested again, I am not paying attention. Okay. So we appreciate the participation as always. So the way that the primetime schedule is going to work next week, it's going to be a little, hit or miss because we're taking the whole radio show up to the combine. We are going to not do primetime on Sunday. Wait. Yeah, we're not going to do primetime on Sunday. And we will probably have, different times throughout the course of the week because we got a million different things going on next week. So we will have primetime shows for you from Indianapolis. We will have right now, Robert, do we want to talk about some of the people that we've got confirmed today? Do you want to or you think that's bad juju? Do you want to wait and surprise them? I don't want to put you in a bad spot. It's up to you.
Yeah, let's save it for Monday. Because we'll still be in Nashville. I don't want to get too excited about somebody and then over the weekend something happens where they're like,
well, I'll give them a hint. Shall I give them a hint?
Sure. I'm interested in what your hint is. Oh, you have it.
That's my hint. That's one. We got like 7,000 damn guests on a radio show next week. But that is one hint for the audience. Now, that could be a number of different people associated with the Tennessee Titans of late. So that's not necessarily a giveaway. Somebody said Josh Pate. Now, Pate's too busy interviewing the President of the United States today, which I'm sure is being received well by half the people, and half the people are celebrating that. So I'm sure Pate's mentions are a dumpster fire at this point in time. But the bald cap is your hint for one of the guests. We have Robert I don't say many nice things about Robert because, there's not a lot of reasons to say nice things about Robert, but he's really busted his ass on all of this. So you can thank Robert for a lot of the great guests that we will have next week. I contributed slightly, but not as much as Robert, who's been busting his ass trying to wrangle PR people on behalf of the people that will appear on the radio show next week. So we'll have some fun ones that are planned. We'll have some spontaneous ones as well. We'll have great coverage from Indy on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to be up there for the whole week long. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy your weekend. I will talk to you on primetime. Well, I guess I'll talk to you on the radio first, and then we'll talk to you on primetime Monday after the fact. See you guys.